Is there ideal strategy to play the Battleship board game? Where should you search first? Where should you place your first ships? Should they touch? Should you use the edges of the board? In this strategy guide, I'll answer all of these questions and many more with the 10 most important tips you need for this game. And we'll also look at the mathematics behind Battleship on Legendary Tactics. In this guide, we'll look at both logical strategies and also ones focused on human behavior. So for number 10, where should you shoot first? I'll keep this simple and tell you that of the 100 squares on the board, any of the 4 squares in the middle have the highest probability of getting a hit. I'll explain this more as I answer the second question. So let's move to number 9, and this is probability. So where should you place your ships? To figure this out, we need to know whether there's an equal chance of being hit in every single space. A battleship board is 10 by 10. Your ships take up 5, 4, 3, 3, and 2 spaces. So in total, you'll occupy 17 of the 100 spaces. Now you might think that this would have a 17% chance of being hit in every space, but if we crack out our calculator, we find that this isn't the reality. You might just have to trust me on that. In fact, you might be surprised to find out that there's actually a 20% chance of getting hit in the 4 squares in the center, whereas there's only an 8% chance of getting hit in the corners. That's odd. Why would that be? Well, mathematicians use probability density functions to calculate this. In regular terms, it just means that there are different likelihoods that a random variable will fall within a certain range of values. Or to put this more clearly, there are more ways that a ship can be placed in the center of the grid than there are at the edges of the grid. Ultimately, I would suggest that you place your small ships far apart. You should avoid A1 because humans are really bad at shooting randomly. It would be better to go in J1 or J10, and you should mix up your patterns so some ships are in the middle and others are on the edges. And avoid having too many ships line up diagonally in case your opponent uses a sweeping search pattern. Number 8, edges. Now that we know the probabilities, we also need to know if your ships should be placed on the edges. Well, this question is partly answered by knowing your opponent. Are they the kind of person who would watch this video? Would they know probability theory? If so, this may come down to a double bluff situation. Did they know that you know probability theory? If they know the math, then putting your ships on the edge of the board won't keep them safe. If your opponent knows that they're more likely to get a hit in the middle, then yes, you should use the edges. It's a bit of a guessing game. If these ideas are helpful, you can support our work by subscribing or liking the video. Every little bit helps out. Number 7, search patterns. Next, let's look at how you should search. The best research on this game came from Nick Berry, who broke down the strategies this way. If you're shooting randomly, it will take you an average of 97 shots to win the game. If you use the search on hit strategy, where you hit and then you keep searching for the ship, then you'll get it down to 90 shots. But if you use the checkerboard strategy, you can lower the score way down to 72 shots. That still seems like quite a bit. And for this one, you have to use your imagination for this part. So what you need to do is think of the battleship board as a chessboard with alternating light and dark squares. And when you're choosing zones to target, you should pick one of the 2 colors and just target those spaces. That's because every ship needs to occupy both a light and a dark square, since all ships are at least 2 spaces long, and they can't be placed diagonally. So now you need only to fire at 50 of the 100 possible options. While searching every other space may seem optimal from a probability standpoint, you might consider searching every 4th square as you begin in an ever-expanding pattern. Then on your second pass, you can fill in every other square, again, starting at the middle and working outwards. Don't bunch your shots too close at the beginning. Number 6, opponent awareness. When we think about the human side of this game, it's important to consider what strategies your opponent is using. Are they following the checkerboard pattern or the chess pattern? Are they placing shots predictably or randomly? Figure out where they tend to start shooting and what quadrants they focus on early in the game. And do they keep that pattern up, or are they alternating patterns? On average, games are much shorter when you sink the smallest ships first, so paying attention to your opponent's approach should give you some information about where to place your smallest ships, as these are your most valuable assets. Number 5, adjusting your strategy. You should definitely adjust your strategy as you play. If you get very lucky and happen to sink their 2-size destroyer, you can now adjust your targeting strategy. Rather than shooting one color of a chessboard, you can now shoot every 3rd square, or leave 2 spaces in between each shot, because this one's gone. Keep adapting this strategy based on the smallest ship your opponent has left. As you fire more and more shots, you have to constantly update the probability of ships being in particular squares. And this is called a probability map. Figure out what size the remaining ships are and where they could possibly fit. In this example, in the corner, there are only 2 ways that a ship could fit into the corner space, so assign that square a 2. If the ship were moved 1 to the right, we see that A2 also has 2 ways that a 3-size ship could be placed there. You'll need to make these calculations quickly in your head, but essentially try to guesstimate which spaces have the most possible ways that ships could fit there, and then hit those spaces first. Number 4. After finding a ship, where should you shoot next? Clearly, you don't shoot diagonally, and you absolutely need to switch from randomly hunting your opponent, or systematically hunting them, to actively targeting the wounded bird. The remainder of the boat will be either left, right, up, or down. And based on where your other shots have gone, the next square you should target should be in open water, or in the spaces that are furthest away from the shots that you've already taken. So for example, if you got a hit on E4, and a previous search was in E1, you should now go for E5. This will begin to narrow your search for the next ship. Number 3, end-to-end ships. When you're placing your ships, should you have them next to each other? Or should you have their ends touching? When you sink a ship, your opponent must let you know, and some people might argue that placing ships end-to-end could be a good idea, because maybe you'll sink it and then they'll stop targeting. However, if they happen to hit the tail end of one ship and then they search the other direction hitting a new ship, they've now found 2 ships, and they're not going to stop until they're both dead. Now, if it's your smaller ships, this may not matter, because once one or the other of the ships is sunk, they may have bad information about which of your ships has sunk, and they may not pursue the second ship. But ultimately, I think this is a losing strategy. In the end, putting ships in clumps is not an ideal strategy because it increases the likelihood of the pack being found. Better to spread them out. Number 2, tells. In poker, some of the most valuable information comes from tells that your opponent offers. Most Battleship players aren't thinking about their reactions to your shots, and they aren't conscious of the way their eyes track the board. While this tip is likely the most intangible and also the most difficult to apply, if you're good at reading people, you might be able to use your intuition to sense when you're getting close to a hit based on how at ease your opponent looks. And likewise, you should be sure not to give anything away when your opponent is getting close to your ships. Number 1, offense versus defense. Battleship is a game that is about both your offense and your opponent's defense. And remember that humans are really bad at coming up with random patterns. If you have the same opponent across multiple games, which is highly likely, you can't use the same search patterns or hiding patterns every time. Use asymmetrical ship layouts and be sure to change your approach from game to game. If you were on the evens in one game, then switch over to the odds for the next game. If you have a ship in one corner, don't mirror it with one in the other corner. Does your opponent tend to shoot where they have placed their ships, or do they avoid shooting in those locations? All of these elements are going to be useful in helping you defeat your opponent. Now get out there, get gaming, and be legendary.